Now, we highlighted a couple of the perks Ms. Payette is qualified for, even though she resigned following allegations against her. But can we highlight all the financial benefits that a former Governor General has access to? How much taxpayer money are we talking about here?
It's quite significant. In addition to the pension, which you mentioned, which is $150,000 a year, there's also an expense account which runs $200,000 per year per Governor General for life. And as you also mentioned, it actually extends beyond the grave. Their office, their estate can claim expenses for 6 months after they die. So it's quite generous. Then perhaps the largest part of it is there are millions available to most governors general. It's completely discretionary in the part of the government to set up a charitable foundation. So we're talking millions of dollars per year of taxpayer money.
Wow, and we know that Canadian Taxpayers Federation has released a petition on this. So can you tell us a little bit more about this petition and how many signatures you have so far, and as well as the goal of this petition?
Yes, well, the goal is obviously to get the government to change the policy on the expenses. That is the one we are targeting. It is the simplest thing to change. It was introduced, believe it or not, by Justin Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau, when he was prime minister. And it can be changed by a cabinet decree. So we are calling on Canadians to sign our petition. Over 100,000 have already signed it, just asking Prime Minister Trudeau to do away with this overly generous $200,000 per year expense account for retired governors general.
Now, back in 2018, the Prime Minister vowed to review the expense accounts of former governors generals. So what came from that review? Were there any changes made?
Well, the government did commission a review, and they got a report back more than a year ago, and it was actually uncovered by the Canadian Taxpayers Federation through an access to information request. That report concluded there needed to be some changes. They acknowledged that there were concerns about the high cost. They didn't make very concrete recommendations, but they made it clear something needed to change. The government has had that report for well more than a year and has not acted on it, so we're calling on them to act now.
Now, this report came after news that a former Governor General, Adrienne Clarkson, paid bills over $1.1 million from Canadian taxpayer money. So what do we know about where those expenses went?
Yeah, that's part of the problem with this program. In addition to the cost, there's just not a lot of transparency. Former governors general submit receipts to Rideau Hall, but we don't get to see it as taxpayers. The public does not get to know what exactly was expensed. And Adrienne Clarkson, as you mentioned, over a 15-year span, she racked up more than $1 million in office expenses. So I think, first of all, she shouldn't be able to claim that. And even if she is, taxpayers have a right to know exactly what she's claiming.
And have there been similar expenses or instances involving other governor generals?
Thankfully for taxpayers, Adrienne Clarkson is the worst offender in terms of dollars. The most recent former governor general before Julie Payette, David Johnston, he even took steps to proactively release some of his expenses by his own will voluntarily, which we thought was great. But the bottom line is it shouldn't be an honor system. They should not have this kind of overly generous program available in the first place.
All right, Mr. Wudrick, we've got about over a minute left, but following this petition, what steps need to be taken by federal officials to make the system more fair and just to Canadian taxpayers?
Well, first, we'd like to see how many Canadians can help share their voice by going to our website at taxpayer.com and checking out the petition and signing it if they agree with what we're asking for. But this government really needs to stop studying and start doing. This is what we call a slam dunk in politics. It is a very silly hill for any government to die on. I've yet to see anyone, even people who are defending other parts of the Governor General's compensation, defend this expense policy. I've not found a single person who thinks it's reasonable that a former retired Governor's General should be getting $200,000 per year in expenses. So the government needs to ideally scrap it altogether, but at the very least, they need to limit it, time limit it, and make sure that it's transparent so that taxpayers see what their money is being spent on.